did you get a publishing deal out of the gate, or did you self-pub to start, or how'd that all play?
Or did you let the dishwasher read it first because you're talking to it anyway?
Welcome to the Two Authors Podcast, an entertaining chat show hosted by best-selling mystery and thriller authors Douglas Pratt and Nicholas Harvey, in lively, humorous and informative conversation with distinguished guests who share their thoughts and experience about forging a successful author career.
Welcome to the show, everyone. This week's show brought to you every week by Vellum, the absolute world's most fabulous formatting software in the entire universe as well. See how I was
I was trying to do like religious sounding kind of cathedral music in the background.
I was just repeating
kind of came down more like
it's
a
the
grave,
best in the world, and then I was like, no, it's not just the world, it's the universe. Like you could write a better, no. Vellum's great.
Universe.
Fabulous. It helps so much if you haven't used it. In fact, I saw a post this week on one of the Facebook pages, people asking, how do I get my book formatted into an ebook? And I mean, first thing I did was Vellum. Go straight to Vellum. Don't waste your time anywhere else. How you doing, Mr. Nick?
I'm good. And I just thought of something that just happened a week or so ago. And this whole thing that indie writers are all writing, every book's AI now, and there's all these storms in a teacup about it. And one of the things that came up was the fact that it said in the book that this book was created by Vellum. And it's a little tag in the front of the, when you produce through Vellum that you could have. And it is, it's the formatting is created through Vellum. So some idiot online started this viral thing that was going, it was created by this company Vellum. They're an AI company and blah, 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 blah. All completely fucking wrong, right? So within a day, Vellum changed that to formatted by Vellum. And that's it. Pushed out an update right away. I was so impressed.
That's very impressive in how quick they were on top of everything. I mean, it's just like their customer service. If you have any problems, you reach out to them. They respond so fast. It's pretty amazing. So
Yes, they do. Hey, next week on the 16th for outlierswritinguniversity.com, Doug and I are doing a presentation on collaborative writing because we collaborate. We're collaborators.
We're the collaborators.
Yeah. So we got stuff going on. You just had Lost Cause come out, huh?
Yes. Me and Chris Ambrose.
You cheated on me.
I'm not, just spread the joy around, spread the love. Not everyone gets to work with.
She's much nicer than I am, so I bet she's better to work with.
Oh, you're fabulous to work with. She's very nice as well to work with. It's very great. We also have next week as well, Missing in Hawaii coming out. That's going to be exciting.
We do. And that's the one that we did together in our Green Wolf series, book 3 in that series. And it is so much fun. They are an action-adventure romps, is how I describe them.
Very much.
And it is from beginning to end. It's a wild ride. It's really cool. And Ray Montecalvo recorded. He's doing some of your other books too, right?
He's doing my Corsair series and does a phenomenal job on
Corsair,
so, yes.
Yeah. He is amazing. What a gem he is. So if you're an audiobook listener, there's that. And then I have on June 24th, the first book in my new series, the Cat Cromwell series. The book is called Why She Had to Die, police procedural set in Southern California. She's a sheriff's department investigator. I'm really excited. I've got 3 books coming out in that series this summer before I get back to my next Nora book. So stuff going on, man.
Our guest today is, she writes in these police procedural. We're going to have Amazon best-selling mystery and thriller writer LynDee Walker, and we're going to chat with her. But I think we have a listener question first, don't we?
We do. From Marjorie in Wisconsin. Do you follow a 3-act structure, save the cat beat structure, 7 or 8 beats, or anything else?
I probably, for me, because I often have pantsed a lot and then plotted, I think mine, I've started more into a 3 to 5 act structure, which isn't way off of like Save the Cat, but I don't pick one in particular. I kind of just, at this point, I think maybe I know the story, so I follow it. But if I'm outlining, I start out with like five acts, and then I break it down from there. So how about you, sir?
I don't have a rigid, I think you naturally fall into rhythms, right, in the way you write. So I use, and I'm a halfway between a plotter and a pantser, so I plot out as I plot in chunks as I go kind of thing. So I have a bit laid out at the beginning. And then when I kind of get through that, the story starts evolving and then I'll come up with more ideas of where it's going and bits and pieces. But I have a spreadsheet. I keep that in and I know the approximate length of what my chapters are going to be that I aim for. And they come out a little above, little below, whatever, wherever the timing works for them. But I have in that spreadsheet, it's sort of 3 sections. So I have a 3-act kind of thing laid out. But then within that, I'll put in places like I'll put a placeholder like I need an action scene here. I need a thoughtful scene here. I need to kind of lay out the beats. So it keeps the rhythm going to it. But I think after 30 odd books, it's a natural kind of thing. And I think keeping that stuff in mind is very important because story structure is important. It's not like you can just ignore it and go, screw it. Right, I just write the way I write and everything else, right? So it's great to bear it in mind. It's great to understand it and it's great to reference it. But if you find yourself committing too strictly to it, you're losing the natural flow, I think. So that's just my opinion.
Like you said, I think you can irritate some readers if you decide to be all stream of consciousness or something like that. So having some structure is vital. And like you said, I think for us, it's probably become more of a second, nature to us, but it's still something that you think about when you're plotting out and trying to make sure you know where everything goes. So on to this week's guest, though. So LynDee Walker, whose books have appeared on finalist lists for the Agatha and International Thriller Awards. She's a big deal.
She is a very big deal. Yes. Not like us idiots. She's somebody.
She's somebody. She regularly tops the Amazon's mystery and thriller charts. So let's welcome Miss LynDee Walker to the show.
LynDee, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great to have you here today.
So give us a quick intro to yourself, how you got involved in writing and when you were first published.
So I am another one of those crime writers who is a reformed journalist. I was a newspaper reporter for many years when we lived in Texas. And when my oldest daughter was born, I left the newsroom to be a stay-at-home mom. And about, 5 years later, I guess, my son was a baby. My daughter was in grade school and she was at summer camp and I was loading my dishwasher. And this sassy reporter in these crazy shoes popped into my head and she was locked in a car trunk down in Shockoe Bottom because she had chased this story into trouble. And I looked at the silverware caddy and said, I don't know anything about writing a book, but I didn't have anything else to do after I started the dishwasher because the baby was asleep. I went to my computer and I wrote that scene and then I wrote another one after that. And 5 weeks later, I had a rough draft of a whole mystery and sort of fell into this second career that has been loads of fun and has enabled me to be at home and raise my kids and still do something I love and contribute financially to my family, which has been great.
Fantastic. And did you get a publishing deal out of the gate, or did you self-pub to start, or how'd that all play?
Or did you let the dishwasher read it first because you're talking to it anyway?
So really, I didn't know anything about fiction publishing then, right? Like I finished this draft and it was crazy long and messy. It was, like the book as it sits on my shelf today is about 78,000 words, I think. And that draft was something insane, like 135.
Oh my God.
Or something.
Sci-fi fantasy level.
Right. Somewhere in this house, there is still like a printed copy of it. I told my husband, right? I was like, if I ever get a big head, you just pull this out of the closet and hand it to me. Let me sit down and read it. Because I did like every wrong thing that they tell you not to do in that rough draft. Like I wasn't reporting anymore. So I was like, I can use adjectives and I use them all. And that's how we ended up with 135,000 words. And,
very descriptive.
Verily, I said.
Right. So, I learned, right? Then I had this draft of this book and my mom and my best friend, God love them, they read chapters as I was working on it and then read the revised version of it a couple of times after I got done with it. And were very insistent that I should try to find a publisher. And I didn't really know anything about fiction publishing. So I looked around on the internet and just happened across one day a message board on Absolute Right. And that's probably my longest running group of writer friends. Like, I don't know why, like, that particular chat thread, we all just were really close. Lots of us have met and hung out in person over the years. A lot of us have gone on to have successful publishing careers. But I remember that I was like, I had Googled something about a certain agent that I was looking at sending a query letter to, and somebody had mentioned him in a thread there. And so it was just luck that I happened in there, and there are probably, I don't know, 15 or 20 of us that have been friends for, gosh, it's going on 15 years now, I guess.
I was going to say, what year was this that you started?
So that was probably the fall, because I wrote that book in the summer of 2009 because my son had just turned 1. His 17th birthday was last week, which he keeps walking around the house going, Mom, I'm going to be a senior next year. And I'm like, we're not talking about that yet because it's not next year yet. Leave me alone. I'm not crying today.
Wait till your grandkids are seniors.
So it's just been this crazy ride. But they were like the first group of people that really, like, I got a lot of advice. I made friends with people who had been doing this for longer, sending out query letters, that kind of stuff. We would swap them back and forth and critique them for each other. And I ended up, mine is kind of a convoluted story. So in the middle of all of this, my mother got very sick and went into hospice care, and she passed away when my youngest daughter was 6 months old. I also had another baby in the middle of all of it. So I had sent out, I think at the time I had sent 14 query letters to agents in New York, and I got 9 requests for pages.
Oh, that's great.
Which I didn't think was very good. I thought, must be a form letter that they send people, right? Because they can't really want to read this thing that I wrote. And so it was my friends in that group on Absolute Right that were like, no, that's a really good request rate. Like, and you should try to do something with this. And my mother, I like shelved it between the baby and my mom getting sick. I was like, I don't have time to mess with this. And I sent out almost 15 letters and nobody wanted to represent it. And so I'm done. And I left it and let it sit. And before she died, my mom was very insistent that she really wanted me to try to get it published. And about a year later, I was doing something on my computer and I saw the file sitting there. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go one more round and see what happens. And when I was poking around on, which one was it? Agent Query or Query Tracker? Those were the two that I used back then. I found a small press that was doing pretty much exclusively humorous mysteries, which is what I thought I had wrote. And I thought, well, I'll send letters to agents, and then I'll send one to these people too. And I ended up signing with them first for the first book in the Nichelle Clark series. And then the year after it came out, it was an Agatha finalist for Best First Novel. And that kind of, it gives you a big pop in visibility, right? So it's been kind of a crazy ride since then. We parted ways, I'm trying to think what year it was, 2017, 2018 maybe. And just so happened that I had a friend who was good friends with Andrew Watts, who was just starting Severn River Publishing at the time. And I guess the story I got was Andrew went to my friend and said, I need a woman who can write a strong female lead character in mysteries because this is what's selling and this is what I want to publish. And my friend Rick said, you know what? I think I know somebody you should talk to. So Andrew acquired all of the backlist books in that series so that we could continue to publish more Nichelle books, and rebranded them, recovered them, everything we went through. And everywhere that I said she had a BlackBerry, he was like, no, she has a cell phone.
Yeah, nowadays kids be like, BlackBerry.
Yeah. He was like, this is going to date these. And I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. So we changed all that. He re-released those. He got a deal with Audible to do audiobooks and then they cast Therese Plummer to narrate. And I don't know if y'all have ever heard any of her work, but she is phenomenal. I love the way she reads those books. Like, I often had in the past, I guess I should say, before Therese, I had a hard time listening to people read my work out loud. And I guess I've just been very fortunate with the casting for all of my audiobooks since then, because I do not have that affliction anymore.
That's fantastic. So I'm very sorry to hear about your mum, losing your mum so early. That's tough. So your Nichelle Clark series, it's set in Richmond, where you live now. So you moved from Texas to Richmond, and then you took the washing machine with you, or the dishwasher. And you based the series in Richmond, and she's a reporter. So you've got all this knowledge for the backstory and everything about her. But most reporters don't get locked in trunks and carried around.
They do not. I did do some investigative reporting and I covered cops and courts. So that part of it Nichelle gets from me. But most of the things that come from stuff that I actually experienced as a reporter are like there are always like these funny little side stories that she covers, because that's part of what I wanted to show, is that it's never just the big main investigative story. You know, you have all this other stuff that comes across your desk that gets in the way because you have to go out and talk to these other people and do these other little daily things. And those are the ones, like in the first book, she gets a police report about a owner at a local junkyard who arrives at work one morning to find a coffin, like a real honest to God, this came from a cemetery or a funeral home, casket blocking the entrance to his place of business. And he has called the police to have somebody come find out what's in it. And so Nichelle goes over there to look, because she's like, well, that's weird. Where did that come from? And, you know, she just, this is a thing that happened. It's a story that I caught when I worked in Texas. I got there and I asked the guy, you know, well, what's inside it? And he was like, I don't know. That's what my tax dollars pay them for. I'm not looking in there. And, it turned out it was filled with scrap metal, and somebody took it to the junkyard and just left it there outside the gate. But yeah, it's the funny little side things that she covers for the most part that are things that, you know, came from my actual life. The rest of it, I mean, I get ideas from headlines and just random stuff that flitters through my head. And sometimes there are elements of stuff that I actually covered in the big crime stories in the Nichelle books, but not always.
So then your Faith McClellan is a Texas Ranger. Do you have any Ranger skills that you have been hiding, and that's where you pulled them up? Or
no, I did.
You a big fan of Chuck Norris? I don't know.
Well, it's funny, actually. They filmed that TV series almost, well, I don't know if it was exclusively, but often in downtown Fort Worth, where I grew up. It's the Tarrant County Courthouse that you see in the background and all that, and old episodes of that. So very familiar territory for me. But really, when I was a reporter there, I covered a couple of cases that the Rangers worked on, because they do so much different stuff. And they come in to assist local law enforcement in Texas with different cases a lot of the time. And one of the most fascinating things to me as a crime writer that they do is run the state's cold case unit for the whole state. And so it was truly, and, you know, they're responsible for the governor's protection detail. And there's like a lot of different really interesting things as a crime fiction writer that you can get into with the Rangers. But they also have sort of this fascinating history where women are concerned, because they were sort of the last good old boys club in law enforcement. Like, the FBI admitted qualified female field agents in the 1930s. The Texas Rangers didn't have one until 1993, when Ann Richards signed a law that said they had to admit qualified women to work in the field. And so, and to date, there have been like fewer than 20 still, I think. I mean, there were so many things that were interesting to me that I thought, you know, having this cop who's this main character be not a local police officer or sheriff's deputy, but a Texas Ranger, what would make a woman want that post badly enough to fight through all of that and get there as her career goal? And, you know, what kind of cases does she catch, and what kind of talents does she have that gets her here? And all of that stuff kind of went into creating Faith. And she is just a great deal of fun to write about. She's very different than Nichelle, but she's a lot of fun.
I mean, you'd probably have to write her pretty strong to compete if you're basically putting her in such a man's environment anyway. I mean, that's got to be a challenge anyway. So,
is that a great appeal to it, being able to write strong, independent, kind of tough females?
I think to a certain extent, especially Faith has a lot of my mom in her. So she's very independent. She is very strong-willed, and she's very, very smart, but she's tough. You know, these big guys come in for hand-to-hand training and think it's funny that they've got this former pageant queen on the mat, that they're just going to go in there and make a show out of it. And then she puts them on their butts. And so.
Question everybody asks, do you plot or you pants?
Oh, I pants. I can't. That's actually one of the things that's really funny about the Turner Mosley series that I do with Bruce, is that I had to learn how to come up with a plot for a book, because that's my responsibility there without writing the whole book. I have a blank screen and characters and sometimes a vague idea of the crime that has happened, but anymore, it's very rare that I even know who did it when I start writing.
Right. And do you start at the very beginning? Or do you jump in like wherever kind of feels right to start off and then fill in before and after? Or
most of the time I try to start at the beginning, but I have had a few books where after I had worked on it for a little while, I figured out that I started in the wrong place. I was, I go back and I go, that's what's not working. This is not where this story starts. This is in the middle. I need to go back and tell the rest of this.
Yeah, sometimes it's tough to do the kind of inciting event, right? When you're not sure what it's going to be about yet. We have a friend who always starts on chapter 2, which is kind of the what's happening with his character and what have you. And then when he figures out what's going to be the big thing, he goes back and does the chapter 1 with the event in it.
When you are pantsing, and this is something for people who do pants, is how do you keep up with story structure?
Part of it for me is, I think one of the handy tools that I have is that I write drafts in Scrivener, because the ability to organize the folders and the scenes and the chapters and different sections now in the psychological suspense books too has been really invaluable to me. I guess the other part of it is that I'm pretty lucky that I have a good memory. And so usually if I look back over what I wrote yesterday, then I can put myself in the story. I mean, I also don't really take a whole lot of time to write a draft. It usually takes me about 3 or 4 months. So there's not a huge lot of time for me to lose track of what's supposed to be going on.
You can't, I lost track of what I wrote yesterday. How do you?
I was going to say, yeah. We write books in like 6 weeks or less for Doug now, and I still forget what I wrote 2 days ago.
I've been running a spreadsheet for this new book because I've had so many characters I'm trying to keep up with. As soon as I create a character, I throw it in the spreadsheet so I can go back and remember their names. Otherwise, I have like 6 victims.
Yeah, and I have a little notebook that I keep next to my computer, and like when I have something I need to list like that I know I'm going to need to go back and refer to, because I'm going to forget what I called this person after so many books with so many different characters. But usually I do pretty okay at remembering. And then there's always when I go back to revise at the end, once I've figured out what the whole story is and I've gotten to the end of it, then there are things that became clear in the end that now I have to go back and seed these things in the beginning and throughout the middle, and that kind of stuff goes along with pantsing pretty well, I think.
You mentioned you take about 3 or 4 months to do a draft. So how many books are you doing a year? You're doing 2, 3?
Usually for the last several years, I've done 2, except for that first year that Bruce and I were working on Turner and Mosley. We did 3 Turner and Mosley books, and I did a Faith book.
Oh, wow. So you did 3 right out of the gate of the
Yeah, I was
co-writes.
like, I'm not doing 4 in a year again. That was hard. So
you're talking to 2 indie writers, so 4 is a slow year.
I do have, 3 children and a husband who travels for work a great deal. So I'm a single mom a lot of the time with the kids. But
one of the big things we say on this show is there's no right way, wrong way. I was listening in and someone was in a chat thing that I go into occasionally, and someone was talking about that they often write between 15,000 and 20,000 words in a day. And I've heard some big numbers before, but they were like, yeah.
On a regular basis?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think it is. And they also throw out a lot of it.
I could peak once every now and again, but on a regular basis, I'd be burned out like in no time.
And it's insane. And you start going, it just gets in your head. You're like, oh my God, if I could just do half of that. It's like, no, that's not the way I work. That's not the way I operate. I can push myself and you can evolve and you can learn to do things, but you're not going to go from doing, if you're 1,000 word a day person, that's your process. You're not going to 15. That's not happening. So each to their own. There's no wrong way, right? No right way, no wrong way.
When I'm drafting a book, I usually do like 1,500, 1,700 words a day for most of it. My 15 to 20,000 word days are always the last day.
Oh, yeah.
When I get to the point where I can see the end, then I'll just sit here until it's all in there.
I always joke, it's like running downhill. Like at that point, I'm not going to stop. And if my wife will come in, it's time for dinner. I'm like, no, screw that.
Yes.
I am done. And as soon as I will stay up all night finishing it or something like that. Yeah, and that's a really good feeling too. You're like, I see it. It's all come together finally.
This one, I guess I finished writing it the weekend before Memorial Day here in the U.S. So a couple of weeks ago. Saturday night, early Sunday morning. It was about 2:00 Sunday morning. And I wrote 16,000 words that day. And the entirety of the final section of this psychological suspense novel. And a week later, I was texting my best friends telling them, how's this for a crazy way that my brain works? I wrote the last section of this book 8 days ago, and I'm sitting here trying to get it ready to turn in, and I don't remember a word of this. I have a really specific memory of sitting here going, this has got to be terrible. By this point, I'm just sitting here typing garbage. I'm going to have to fix it all. And I was like, the good news is it's not bad. And I'm not doing a lot of rewriting, but I'm sitting here like laughing and looking at stuff going, oh, I wonder where that's going to go. Because I don't remember.
One of the best pleasures is when you do your read through and you come to stuff and you're like, I don't remember writing that. That's so good.
That's really good.
Good. Yeah. Did I do this?
Did I write that? Yeah. Did I write that?
That's a good one right there. It doesn't happen
I'm not
as often as you like.
Yeah, not as much. So now you talked about your code writing. So, I mean, that's something a lot of people ask about. So, and you're writing with Bruce Robert Coffin. So tell us a little bit about how that came about, what it is you're writing, because it's a little different than your other two series, right?
It is. So this was different for me and Bruce both. And we kind of thought, either this is going to be loads of fun or we're completely insane for attempting to do something that's outside of what our normal for both of our books had been. Bruce is a retired homicide detective sergeant. So this was really like kind of outside his box. So I had this idea. We had reached a point several years ago now in my career where I was writing 2 Faith McClellan books a year because they were trying to build up books in that series. And those books are pretty dark. Like the Nichelle books, they have quite a bit of humor, some, lighter scenes in them. And I don't know if you guys have discerned this yet, but my personality is not super dark.
You don't come across that way. Yeah.
Like alternating between Faith and Nichelle was fine. And I was doing good with that. And then they said, let's let Nichelle rest. You've left her in a good place at the end of this book. And we want to build up more books in the Faith series faster because these are selling well, which is, publishing is a business and that's cool. And so I said that was fine. And after, 2.5 or 3 years of doing that, I was like, I cannot just keep having to come up with different ways for serial killers to cut people up and to have a good reason for it every 6 months. Like, this is not my personality. And so I had this crazy idea for a series about these, young people that are independently wealthy enough to be able to fly all over the world and do as they please. And they get sucked into going to hunt for treasure and occasionally solve a murder mystery because that seems that I can't write anything that doesn't have a dead body somewhere. And I didn't really know that anybody was going to be interested in it, but I was talking to my agent on the phone one day and I mentioned it and he got really excited about it. And he called Andrew at Severn River and Andrew did some market research and got really excited about it. But they said, we don't want to overload you with too much work. So let's bring in a co-writer and build this series with 2 people from the ground up so that you're not having to do quite as much to get these books out as fast as we want to be able to put them out. And I kind of thought, I'm not James Patterson. Like, who's going to want to do that with me? Really? And so, but he had gotten, I guess the publisher had gotten some stuff from a couple of agents where they had sent over lists of clients that they had that were interested in a co-writing situation. And this was sort of a light bulb moment for me because it was the first time I ever really realized that not everybody's brain is exactly like mine. Like, I have so many more story ideas than I will ever know what to do with. I have a file in my computer that's hundreds of pages long because I get into something and then I get a different idea for something else. But not everybody has those squirrels come up apparently while they're working. Or I've had things where like my editor will kick back, like one of the Faith books, I remember getting edit notes where he was like, and now somebody is trying to assassinate a United States senator. Like, there's so much going on here and that's legitimately the plot for a whole nother book. Just take that out of here and set it aside and we'll do that later. And so they sent me a list of people that they had heard were looking for a situation like this. And when I saw Bruce's name on it, like Bruce and I have been friends for years and I had read his Detective Byron series. So I knew he was a good writer and I was like, oh, I like Bruce. And like, I've read his other books and he's a good writer. Let's talk to him first. And he tells people I kind of like, he came kicking and screaming because it took me and his agent and his wife to sort of get him dragged into this. He kept saying that he wasn't sure that he was going to be able to do what I wanted. And so finally we settled on, I was like, let me send you my notes for the first chapter and you write the first chapter and see how it comes out. And when he sent me that chapter back, he said, I really had a lot of fun with this. And I was surprised because I've never tried to write funny before, but I think it comes across. And I was sitting in line to pick up my son from basketball camp and was reading it on my phone and was sitting in the car going, yes, this is exactly what I wanted. This is going to work, and we thought, okay, well, we'll do this first book and we'll either be better friends or we'll hate each other. And so thankfully we have gotten to be very good friends and we have just had so much fun with these books.
Yeah, so we're about to do a presentation for Outlier University that's on collaborations because we've been involved and done some between us. And the title is How to Keep Murder on the Pages and Not Between the Authors.
Not between
So once you got it rolling and established, how did you divide up the work? Do you write 50% each? Do you alternate chapters? Do you do sections? Who does what duties?
So we actually do the characters and the plot are mine. So I do, my part of it is I do a really, what we call a detailed outline. Now I will tell y'all that, like I said, I've always been a pantser and I had trouble early on figuring out how to do this. So the first the outline that Bruce got for The General's Gold was like 54,000 words.
That's known as a book in most bookstores. Yeah.
The editor was like, so you left Bruce like 7 words to write.
I was going to say, how long was the book? 65,000. He had to write the ending.
So it was, it has taken me some time to get used to having ideas come in without having to write the whole scene that came before. So I send him a detailed outline that's like chapter by chapter. Here's the case. Here's where they go next. Here's what they're looking for. This is who they talk to. This is what they find out. Now they're going to talk to somebody else. And, as we've gone on through the series, I think both, I'm a little bit of a control freak. And so I have learned to trust that Bruce is going to do a great job with these and that he knows the characters and he knows the world just as well as I do. And he has learned to trust himself a little bit because with that first book, every time he wanted to do something that wasn't in the outline, he'd text me and say, well, I had this other idea. And I was like, just do whatever's coming into your head. Like I gave you the thing. Now you go write it. We can talk, send me the draft back and we'll talk about it after the fact if there's something that I really think needs to be changed. But a lot of the stuff that he did in that first one when he was working on it, I remember that there came a point when I was reading the draft and he had changed up this scene where they were underground in a cave such that I was like, he texted me about something and I was like, sorry, I'm trying to read it. If my house was on fire, I would not put this book down and walk out because, oh my God, she's in the dark with all these dead bodies. And he was like, oh, good. I'm glad you like that. So we really have gotten to a point where it's a partnership and we trust each other. There came a point last year when I wasn't sure if I wanted to do more books after the initial 4 and the publisher had gone to Bruce and talked to him about, hey, would you want to continue the series without LynDee because the characters and he called me and said, I told him no, because this is you do the plots and it's not going to be the same if it's not both of us.
And the books are, I've been listening on audio actually, and the guy that reads the audio, which is an interesting decision because the main protagonist in the first book is female, but it's a guy reading it. He does a fantastic job. And there is lots going on. There's lots of history. There's diving, skydiving. There's all kinds of adrenaline junkie stuff going in there. So where does all that come from? Did you put all that in the plot? Did he fill that in? Who works on what when it comes to all that?
So I put all that stuff in the plot. Bruce has actually been skydiving. So that part was personal experience. Neither one of us has any experience to speak of with scuba diving. I mean, I think resorts in Mexico don't really count. And so it was just part of Carter's character and who he was. And I wanted them to be able to dive these shipwrecks. And so I did so much research. I literally read all the dive manuals that PADI has available online. At one point, I think it was the second book, the calculations for this really crazy, dangerous dive that Carter's going to do. I was doing algebra with the Navy dive tables, trying to figure out, I was like, somewhere my 6th grade math teacher is like, I told you were going to have to use that. Because I'm sitting here making up and writing equations, trying to figure out what are the absolute limits that I can push this to for him to not die while he's doing this. And even then we always put in the acknowledgements, obviously this is fiction. Please do not try this at home. But we also have been fortunate to have friends who are serious scuba divers, master diver certified folks who have read drafts for us and said, hey, no, in General's Gold, when they go on that first dive into the galleon and they're looking at stuff, originally we had Avery touch something in the ship, and we got a note from someone who dives and they said, no, you can mess up a whole ecosystem under the water. She shouldn't do that. So that was also very helpful to get feedback from people who actually do this and know about it.
Let's touch on your new release that's coming out in a few weeks' time. is with Bookouture. So this is a new project. So give us a quick rundown on how that came about, because you were telling us beforehand, and it's quite interesting. It's called The Pastor's Wife, right? So slightly different genre and with a new publisher.
Yes. So this one is psychological suspense. Is my first psychological suspense book, and I had so much fun with the story. So it came about, the editor that I'm working with at Bookouture had reached out to me in an email and said she read the first book in my Faith McClellan series and she loved the book and she was interested in working with me, and would I be interested in talking with her. I love her to pieces now, and I have had such a great time working with her and have learned so much from her. And I'm very thankful that she was so persistent, because it took, like, the first time she asked, I was like, I'm really happy with where I am right now. I appreciate that. And she came back a couple more times and just said, hey, I'm still here. I'm still interested. Has your situation changed at all? And finally, last summer, my agent and I decided that there were some things that made it a good decision to take this step and see what they wanted to talk about. And the psych suspense was her idea. Actually, I just assumed that they were going to want me to do a procedural series, because that's what she had read. And when we were talking that day, she, when I asked her what they wanted, she said, have you ever thought about writing psychological suspense? And I said, no, I read books in that genre and I like it, but I haven't ever written one before. And she said, I just have a feeling that you would be good at this. Let's just give it a try. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something else. And I was like, okay. And I took the characters and some of the situations from a short story that I wrote for a Noir at the Bar event several years ago that I have read all over the United States now, at different, from Seattle to Dallas to Raleigh and DC. And it's always crazy to me that people have such a reaction to this story. I always get people who come up at the end of the night and they're like, I love this character. And I'm like, she is insane. Did you guys hear what I said? I thought, I wonder if this situations and the characters and the setting could maybe carry a book. And so we took it and just spun it into something that's so much bigger and so much darker and more sinister in a lot of ways, but is also a story about women and friendship and small towns and secrets. And it's just, I had so much fun with it. And I'm so excited for readers to finally get to see it on the 16th. So
excellent. Best of luck with the new release. That's very exciting. Okay, couple of questions to wrap things up. So the first one, which we ask everybody on the show, is what do you think your author's superpower is?
I spent so many years as a reporter, really listening to people talk and writing down what they were saying, and I guess making mental note of their tone, that when I hear the characters in my head, they sound real to me. And that's probably the most consistent compliment that I get from other writers, is they say, I really love the dialogue. It's so good. And I think it's the reporting background. That's why.
Okay, last one. Doug.
Yes. Hold on.
Whip out the wheel.
Wheel. A little warbly.
Wow, that's a big ass spin right there.
I know, I felt like it.
Still going.
You kind of answered this, but we're going to ask it anyway. So which part of the book do you enjoy writing the most? The beginning, the middle, or the end?
For me, it's usually the end, which is that last day of all those words. I think really, I like the beginning of a new story too. The middle is always hard for me, but the end is, I feel like I can breathe, because every book I think, what if this is the one that doesn't work and falls apart in the middle and it doesn't come together? And once I see the end and I get there, I'm like, okay, there's a whole story here. Whatever else is going on, I can fix, but I have a whole story.
That feeling in the middle of the book you get, you know what they call you for having that? An author.
I was going to say normal, because that's all of us.
Yeah, just a regular author. Everybody goes through the same thing.
How many of us sitting about 60% going, oh my gosh, this is so crap. So
yeah. Where am I going? What's happening? This is junk. This has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll have to have you on again, because we had a list of questions we never even got to.
Say, we got so many things we didn't even touch on. So it's been great.
We'll when your new psychological thrillers are killing it out there, and you've got another 3 of them out, we'll have you back on to talk about them.
That's right.
That sounds awesome. I would love to come back. This was great fun. Thank you guys for having me.
Big thank you to LynDee Walker, a lovely lady.
Oh, yeah, she was great. So, and man, she's definitely got some skills. She's doing all sorts of things, from a more humorous book to the darker Texas Ranger, Faith McClellan.
Yeah.
to her more adventuresome, or she's actually having to outline the books for Coffin to be writing them. It's a challenge, and that requires being able to adjust and adapt. And I think that's something that a lot of people in their minds are like, oh, I got to do it this way. And once you learn this way, that's just the way I do it. And I don't think that's always the right way to do it. So I think you got to be able to adjust.
It's a balance, right? Because I mean, it's we always say you do you, and there's no right or wrong way. It's whatever way works, as long as the story that comes out is a good story. Then do it your way. But being able to adapt is also there are certain situations where you have to be able to adapt, right?
You nailed it when you said doing what works. So if you're doing something and it's not working, then adapting is the first thing you need to do. And there's a lot of new writers out there who will be like, well, nobody's buying my book. Well, maybe your cover's bad. Well, no, my cover's fine. You don't know, it's not selling. So adapt and change it, adapt and figure out a different genre. You're not very good. If I asked you to write, steamy romance, Nick, I don't know how good you'd be at it. You might be great.
Chicka wow wow, chicka wow. I'd be terrible at it. I'd be terrible at it.
I think that's just important. So
yeah, and she's very adaptable. She's very adaptable.
I'm a wordsmith.
yeah, right. The one that I thought was really interesting was she does an outline. She writes 54,000 words.
I was like, holy cow! I was like, wow.
She realized
I haven't get 54,000 in my book yet. I was like, that's not quite
I'm
there
like
yet, so.
54,000. I was like, wow, I'm in the end run for this thing now.
I'm done. Yes.
Cool. Big thanks to our friends at Vellum for their support. Go to tryvellum.com/2 authors to find out more, or Google Vellum and you'll find them. That's the other way.
You probably find them in our show notes, right? You've got them. We've got them going on our show notes.
We have all kinds of cool stuff. And how to get hold of LynDee Walker and her books, because I'm sure you'd like to take a look at those. Lots of information in our social media, all that good stuff. New episodes every 2 weeks. Thanks a lot for being here, people. Until next time, be cool to each other.
And fair winds and following seas.
You've been listening to the Two Authors podcast with Nicholas Harvey and Douglas Pratt. Subscribe on your favorite platform for alerts on new shows coming every 2 weeks.